This weekend was no different. Tropical Storm Hilary completely drenched Southern California over the weekend. And you wrote for Forbes 3 must-know messages for the Western U.S. about Hilary. So I do want to break them down, starting with your first point, the relative irrelevance of hurricane category. As you know, Hilary was downgraded once it made landfall in the Los Angeles region. But can you explain this point a little bit for us?
Oh yeah, I saw a lot of coverage and talk about Hurricane Hilary out approaching Southern California, Cat 4 hurricane approaching Southern California. I just thought that was bad messaging because it was never forecasted to be a hurricane when it got to California, or even likely when it made the inland landfall near Mexico. But that wasn't the point. We knew that the rainfall from the storm and the tropical storm that it would become would be the big problem for that area. So I think what that messaging ended up doing is it had people perhaps thinking there were going to be hurricane winds in Los Angeles and San Diego and places like that. That was never the case. But the point, and I think it gets into one of my second or third points as well, we were always mostly concerned about the rainfall that was going to fall. And I think that has been borne out as I'm looking at pictures coming in from Southern California.
I do want to talk about the rainfall in a little bit, but you're saying Cat 4 hurricane hurtling towards the Los Angeles area, that's bad messaging. What do you think the messaging should have been then?
Yeah, I think the messaging should have been that, yes, we have a hurricane in the out over the water, but it is expected to be a tropical storm when it impacts the large population centers of the United States. Don't be concerned about the category or the wind speeds. That's not the threat. Be concerned about how widespread they'll be and how long they'll last. I've been on a mantra for some time now that we need to sort of disengage from sort of focusing too much on category and focus more on impacts. And I would say that even on the East Coast too. So for example, when people in Los Angeles or San Diego hear Category 4 hurricane weakens, I think psychologically they let their guard down, yet the impacts that we were expecting from that storm never changed just because it went from a hurricane to a tropical storm. We always expected terrible rainfall, irrespective of the category.
You've broken this down for our viewers before, but can you explain what the category does mean and how that might be deceiving when it comes to impact?
Yeah, well, the category is based on the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is a wind scale. It's an engineering scale. It's based on the wind speeds, and that's related to pressure. Now, that is important. A Category 4, 5, or Category 3 storm, those are major hurricanes, and they can be quite devastating, as we've seen over the years with various Category 5, 4, 3 storms, like perhaps Hurricane Michael and so forth. But the point I want to make is that in places like Los Angeles, it was never going to be a Category 4 storm, but because that region receives so little rainfall, relatively speaking, in a given year, the rainfall impacts were going to be so much more amplified than, say, they would have been anywhere else, just because they're not accustomed to that type of rainfall and don't necessarily have the infrastructure. So the category is certainly meaningful, certainly it should be used, but one of the things that I always convey is it doesn't really tell you much about the rainfall potential in these storms. That's more determined by how slow they're moving, how large they are, and some of the other things that just aren't folded into that category.